How's it going, everybody? This is Anthony Drummond here. I'm bringing to you today a fascist roundtable. We have various leaders within the ABP movement, and we're here to discuss a few topics with you today. First off, we're going to be discussing foreign policy, Syria in particular. We might touch up a little bit on the whole deal going on in the Korean Peninsula right now. And second, our second topic of the day will be Trump's tax cuts and taxes in general, and their effect on our debt and what's wrong with them, and why what the Republicans and conservatives are doing is ultimately going to have a negative effect on the country as a whole. So here today I have Joshua Neuer with us. I have JD. I have Matt, and I have Luca. So how's it going, everybody?
Going well, going great.
Oh,
Pretty
yeah.
well.
Okay. So, I just have a few concerns about our foreign policy today, and not necessarily just in recent history, but kind of going on through the 21st century and even before that. Right now, like we've been having, is a kind of a policy of intervention. Every time something goes wrong on the globe, America is right there pouring trillions of dollars into it. We lose American lives every time we do that. We invade countries because they're having small countries in small parts of the globe that really don't have any effect on the daily life of American citizens. There's no threat, there's no danger to the average person here in the United States. Yet again, you always see the president, whoever happens to be the president at the time, on TV telling us that they want to invade this country or come up with some military action in order to save American lives and keep us safe, when that's not always the case. Vietnam, that wasn't the case. Those guys weren't attacking people on American soil. I know you had 9/11, but for the most part, Iraq had nothing necessarily to do with that. Iraq wasn't threatening American lives. They weren't affecting us in any way. They might have had a little bit of control over oil prices, but then again, that's not my cup of tea or expertise right there. And I don't think that's a reason to invade a country and destroy them. And everybody knows it was about oil. Afghanistan, we pumped a bunch of troops into the mountains in the middle of Central Asia, a landlocked country that, those people, most of them don't even have TV or anything like that. And they don't know anything about America, nor do they have access to American soil, and then again, you have the whole Korean incident in the 50s. We weren't in danger then. It was just all about, and I'm not against, being anti-communism, but it was just all about capitalism versus communism at that point, and that costs a lot of American lives. So what's going on recently was in Syria. We bombed Syria, as the United States military, wasted a bunch of money. How much do one of those Tomahawk cruise missiles cost? Probably more than what you make in a year, or probably more than what some people make in a decade. They've got to be, what?
I think they're 500,000 each.
Yep, per missile. So they wasted, what would that be?
It's just a lot of money. They wasted
more than a decade of my wages, or roughly that, and that's not a good thing. It's a big drag on our money. It's a big drag on our economy. Now you got to replace these missiles. Now you have to, you got to worry about retaliation and such things, when and nothing Syria is doing at the moment is affecting the average American, and it's not putting us in danger. It's not going to put you in danger, the listener. It's not going to put anyone in danger on this channel. So why bomb them? It's just making a statement, and they're making a statement to Syria that they shouldn't use chemical weapons, when it's a big possibility that they didn't even use it themselves. It could have been one of the rebel groups over there. Honestly, it's just a cluster of chaos in that region, and you really can't point fingers when there's nobody on the ground that could actually verify what's going on. So they were pretty much jumping the gun.
Yeah, I'd like to add that, the cost for these things, such as the missiles, bombs, whatever we send flying down from the sky, is, as we've seen, is immensely expensive. And we drop these on targets like, some tent in the desert that's like, and a couple $100,000 flushed down the drain, just like that. And at what cost? What are we gaining from it? Okay, obviously in the fight for terrorism, it's good to eliminate terrorists. But in the case of Syria, we're trying to show the world that, we don't stand for these things, especially Trump. He said, I remember the first time he decided to bomb Syria, which was back in spring of 2017. I remember he was saying, there was little babies, little babies dying. And this is the same guy who said, in regards to terrorist families who may not even be terrorists themselves, that we have to kill them all. I mean, this is a guy who, when it comes to matters of when it comes to morals, really, it should mean nothing, because it does mean nothing. It's a whole power play. I mean, I think he's trying to get back at Russia to an extent. I don't really know what goes on in the guy's head, but it's a bad, he's the one about, all about deals and everything. It's a bad deal for us to be getting involved with Syria, to be trying to bomb these countries. Especially, and the scary part is that Russia has backed Syria. I don't think any of us are really worried about Syria, but we're worried about what Russia might do, and that's the concern.
Let me mention, just on top of that, kind of some more specific details as to exactly what Russia is prepared to do. In recent years, in fact, if I recall correctly, the past 2 years, Russia been accused by both Sweden and Finland of violating their airspace. They've deployed their only aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov, to the Mediterranean, to Syria. They have utilized massive airstrikes in Syria to suppress targets. They've also deployed S-300, 400, and 500 class surface-to-air missiles to Syria. Now, what exactly could those surface-to-air missiles be deployed for, which the S-3, 4, and 500 classes are regarded as some of the finest surface-to-air missile systems in the world? Do the Syrian rebel groups, does Islamic extremists, do they possess air forces? No, those weapons are deployed primarily for one opponent, for one target, and that's Americans. They are there, they are ready to fire at Americans, and if the man that we have in the White House right now bungles this situation, those missiles will be shooting down American pilots, and it's completely, totally unnecessary.
Yes, and it's very possible that we could lose lives. We send a couple fighters over there. Some of those are going to get shot down. Exactly. Especially with those advanced. I mean, this isn't the Iraqi army we're facing up against. We face up against the Russians. It's going to be some serious stuff.
And what is to be gained through this? What are we gaining? We're only losing in this possible conflict.
Yeah,
we're losing American lives, and that's what I don't want to see, is Americans not coming home, and people coming home who are broken for a war or for a conflict that is not going to help us in any way, that served absolutely no interest but to maybe virtue signal by saying, like, oh, we care about this group of, we care about these people, so we're going to do something about it because this is the role of America. If that's the role of America, then we have to change that.
Yeah, and we do, and it's obvious that's the role of America because that's what's been happening for, all of our past wars, maybe even aside from World War II, which honestly you could categorize World War II in that as well, as we're just intervening in things.
We were bombed with the Japanese and all that stuff, but yeah.
And so we were kind of coaxed in that war, and if we're bombed, we got to retaliate. Most of these wars, sit out of it, let it play out, and let the people of that country decide what's going to go on there, because what's going to happen is they're going to have an outcome that is not a natural outcome. It's only going to happen because of foreign intervention. When you have natural outcomes, then you're going to have a balance in that country. The people are going to be satisfied because, they won their war and they decided the fate of their country instead of the foreign power of the United States deciding their fate and installing a democracy when that's not what they were fighting for. Most of these people are fighting for a specific thing. I mean, whether it's communism or fascism or they're fighting for their religion, let them decide what's going on in their own country. And they'll probably be happy and the violence might go away. After we pulled out of Iraq, the violence never left. Did it? Did not.
No. And, another thing is that, again, when it comes to the whole moral issue surrounding this, is that we, like I said, we put on this front, or our leaders rather put on this front that it's because we're saving the children, and they apply it to every single issue in the United States. It's for the kids, it's for the children. if this was really the case, for the children, we are allied with Saudi Arabia, who is based, is stomping on Yemen right now. Children are starving. It's being bombed. But of course we're their allies. So if this really was a moral issue, I mean, there are so many atrocities taking place around the world right now, and people's being brutalized and whatever. If this was a moral issue, we'd be involved with that. But no, this is not a moral issue. The president has chosen to make it into a moral issue, or he's tried to hide it as such.
Yeah.
Well, and another point to touch on is the fact that we are practically depriving ourselves. Russia could present tremendous upside for us if we could learn to coexist in a world with multiple major powers. Because if you look at the situation directly in the Middle East, it was, I believe, today, as a matter of fact, that Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, announced that Iran is secretly subverting the nuclear arms deal. Russia could be a huge role player in getting Iran back on good footing if Russia could apply pressure to Tehran. That could very seriously dissuade the Iranians from pursuing that nuclear weapon that they're so eagerly seeking to develop. And then also, Russia could be a tremendous ally in leveling peace in East Asia with the situation in Korea. Now we see the North and South Koreans are what appears to be warming up to each other. The situation is easing there, but that could be a very false sense of peace. It could be that North Korea has finally developed the weapon that they desire, and so that they could this could be an entire ploy that they would come to a negotiating table, not get the deal that they want, back away, accuse us of negotiating in bad faith, and then utilizing those weapons. Russia could be tremendous in ensuring that North Korea stays on side and keeps good faith. With North Korea continuously losing support from the Chinese, North Korea would want another power broker to back them, and they could look to Russia potentially to be a strong ally for them. So if we deprive the North Koreans of that, then they're going to have to keep good faith.
Yeah, and it really just doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, what was it? 2-3 months ago, we were apparently or supposedly on the verge of nuclear war with North Korea, and all of a sudden you have a picture of the two Korean presidents holding hands, walking side by side. That does seem 100% realistic to me as far as from the North Korean side. I mean, they've been holding this grudge for years and years and years, and it literally is a country that's split in two. They're one peoples, but they have two governments, two countries with, a very militarized border, arguably the most militarized border in the entire world. So just to think that they're going to, toss their arms down, toss their nuclear weapons away, because they do have nuclear weapons. They do, pretty much what their goal is to develop a delivery system for those weapons and miniaturize their nukes. And pretty much if they've gotten there, which there's a lot of evidence that they have, or they're very close, they're not just going to toss everything away. They feel like they have a big chip that they could put into play, come to the negotiation table like, look, we have the weapons just like you do. Lift these sanctions and let us do our thing. That's what they want to do. And, it could just kind of be a ruse for some whole other bigger event. I mean, I'm not going to go into conspiracies and stuff like that and any theories or anything, but, they've been our enemy. They're communists. They're someone that maybe we shouldn't necessarily trust. If they're being honest in them wanting to put down their arms, then maybe that's a good thing. I don't think we should necessarily starve their people by slapping a bunch of sanctions on them.
Oh, they're already starving.
Yeah, they're already starving, but I think the American government has a big piece in that, in depriving them of the materials they need.
North Korea?
There's a lot of countries that don't trade a lot of things with them. just because of the whole sanction deals and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's not very believable that they just want to be friendly all of a sudden when a couple months ago they were threatening to nuke Tokyo and Seoul and Washington D.C. It just doesn't make sense. But by the way, Neuer, what do you think about the whole deal on the peninsula right now?
I think that it's more than likely North Korea already has nuclear weapons and has the capability of delivering them. That's why at this point they're ready to come to the table and they're ready to negotiate with the United States and South Korea. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with American foreign policy and the reasons why we should not intervene many of these times. A lot of political scientists and foreign policy theorists think that North Korea began to go after nuclear weapons and pursue this technology as a result of the Persian Gulf War. They saw what happened to Hussein and Iraq, and they were afraid the same thing was going to happen to them. And I think there's a lot of viability to that argument. Also, the same thing could be said for Iran, that they started to engage in this after that war because they saw what happens to enemies of the United States. And let me go back to Syria for a few minutes. There's some broader foreign policy implications to what's going on there. Look at what happened with the Gulf War and when we went into Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein. Before that, about 7% of the population of that country was Christian. When we left, less than 1% was. Right now, Christians in Syria account for about 10% of that population. If the Ba'athist Party there is unsuccessful, that 10% will go down to about 1%. The same thing that happened in Iraq is going to happen to Syria because the people that the United States is supporting there are the remnants of the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamic fundamentalist groups that his father have been fighting with for the last 30 years. And so it's essential, but as humanitarians in general, that we get on the right side, that we encourage our government and Donald Trump to support Assad and the Ba'athist Party. And especially as fascists, because we got to take a unique view of foreign policy. I think the greatest enemy to fascism is liberal democracy. Our foreign policy right now at this point has to be to oppose the growth of liberal democracy anywhere we see it and to support world that are fascist or resemble fascism or even oppose liberal democracy. So that means a party like the Ba'athist Party, we need to actually support them, Islamic fundamentalists in that country. Because I've said this before, but a fascist island in a sea of liberal democracies cannot survive. The economic isolation, the political isolation is going to wear on it, and it would not last. So this movement that we're starting here, national, needs to be international in scope, and the way we look at foreign policy has to be to look at it as fascist. Now, I just want to read a quote real quick. Freedom is not articles in the Constitution and texts of the laws. It is not merely a subject for oratory and writing, but action before everything else. It will not enter into our lives unless we give our lives for it. We will not impose its esteem on the rulers and make the people aware of its value and sacredness unless our faith in it becomes a fighting faith and our defense of it becomes martyrdom. Now, when I first read this, it sounds like something from Benito Mussolini or Giovanni Gentili. But this is from a man named Michael Aflaq, who was the founder of the Ba'athist Party. Yeah. This is what Assad represents. This is what Baathism represents. And right now, this is what the United States is trying to overthrow. That's why we have to adamantly oppose this war in Syria. And this applies even to organizations like NATO and our policies in the Pacific. Russia is not perfect. Putin has his issues. But Russia is a nation which teaches Christianity in its public schools, put restrictions on abortion. Putin has greater family growth. They put public policies in place to grow families so they don't have to rely on immigration. Russia right now should be a conservative dream, yet we have organized our policies to combat Russia. Now, I would like a conservative Republican come on and tell me why why we should oppose Russia, why we should be confrontational towards that country. It sounds to me like that's a country we should be working with. It's a country which represents, to a large extent, the values most. So I would say we oppose the growth of NATO, and our policy in the Pacific should be to oppose the growth of liberal democracy and support governments which come close to that fascist model.
Yeah, I think that Russia could potentially be a very powerful ally, and kind of what we're trying to do in our ideas on foreign policy and how we should face the world and deal with it. Yeah.
Do you mind if I cut in just for a quick second? Because I think I want to set something up for you, Josh. I want to basically put this ball over the plate for you and see how far you can hit it. What's your take on the idea of the U.S. launching missile attacks in Syria before an investigative process is even completed into these recent chemical attacks, which was used as the reasoning, the justification for the missile attacks, so that they hadn't even conducted the work on the ground when we're already firing missiles?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It actually doesn't make any sense at all that an accusation this serious, should not be investigated further. World, would Bashar Assad and his army launch chemical weapons after Donald Trump was thinking about pulling troops out? How stupid would Assad have to be to do that? I mean, this is a college-educated man. He's very smart. Him and his wife are. So it makes absolutely no sense at all that they would do this. And for us to not even go in and investigate it, I mean, I don't know what kind of intelligence they think they have on the ground there, but it's beyond words.
Even if Assad or whoever, the Syrian army, whatever, launched chemical attacks onto their own people, we shouldn't be involved with it. People will say, I've heard this from a lot of conservatives recently, is that, oh, well, he did, and we have to step up to the plate. No, we don't have to step up to the plate. Even if he did, we don't have to do anything about it. That's his problem. That's Syria's problem, not America's problem. American blood and treasure should not be spilled so that we can go and correct some other countries' problems.
That's a great point. And I think we have this strange mentality here in the United States that every single dictator across the country is the next coming of Adolf Hitler. And if we don't insert American military power there, then you're going to see something along the lines of the Holocaust. It's a completely irrational way of thinking that doesn't make any sense at all. It's used more to justify American military and the growth of and securing the growth of liberal democracy overseas than anything else, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that narrative has been used so much and it's been successful. It's been successful, but I think, and I'm hoping it's starting to wear off, where people are starting to see that no, this isn't the case. This doesn't have to be the case, where we have to go and somehow stop these boogeymen, and save the world. In the case of Saddam, and the case of Gaddafi, and now it's going to be the case of Assad. Were Saddam and Gaddafi bad people? Yes, they were. But what was happening in their country was their business, and it's just they were strong men, but they stabilized. They had the region. The region was stable, and now it's just become, at least in Libya, more extreme recently. It's become total chaos.
Yeah, I think you're right that this mentality is starting to kind of lose its steam and lose its luster. But this kind of warped thinking that we have, where every day is World War II, is still unfortunately pretty strong in the American psyche. I know during the campaign we had Ben Carson, one of the Republican candidates, try to say that the Holocaust might not have been as bad as it was if the Jews were armed. It's very irrational, this mode of thought. And if we go back through political propaganda since probably the 60s, every single candidate, whether they're on the left or the right, has been compared to Adolf Hitler or Benito Mussolini, and it's just it's ridiculous. It's going to be a hard sell. It's going to take some time to get people to come off this kind of psyche that there's a Nazi behind every closet or there's a fascist under every bed that's just waiting to pop out.
That's the leftist boogeyman. I agree. They think that everything is some sort of fascist conspiracy, and that, like, the police, somehow, like, there's a giant picture of Hitler or something that they're giving an oath to avenge him or something, and that everything's a fascist conspiracy. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
I think funny. We can testify to the fact that fascists have no reason to conspire, for anything. We're telling you up front who we are and what we represent. There's no conspiracy to be had. We're genuine. We're forthright with what we are and with what we believe. And so there's absolutely no conspiracy. So I think that
I'm surprised
our very presence dispels any sort of leftist argument or notion to try to scare people away from us.
Yeah, I'm surprised the left hasn't picked up on this already. That real fascists, they will tell you, they're not gonna always hide it. They may not be upfront about it, but if they know you're one or something, they'll tell you. But to think that what they're really, the left is, really, they see some conservative say something, and it's somehow, something about authority or something that just, or they'll twist it into something that somehow sounds like it's gonna be some sort of evil fascist repression of some sort. I remember when they lost their minds when Donald Trump quoted Mussolini. I remember that was pretty funny to watch, and and Trump played him on that. He just had to say something outrageous, and he did every time, and they fell for it, and he got free coverage.
Well, but you know what? At the same time, why you say that, just connecting off of that, maybe this is me going down yet another rabbit hole. I think that people on the right need to be equally afraid. Conservatives need to be afraid because Donald Trump seems to be poking the tiger continuously on all fronts, in matters domestic and in foreign. And you can only go to that go to the well so many times till it's going to come up dry, because the way that he keeps continuously provoking things, let's just give him, let's say, what, the current situation on the Korean Peninsula, him being recommended for a Nobel Peace Prize, let's say that is his work. His management of it overall, though, like what was mentioned earlier, 2 to 3 months ago, we're talking about possible war with North Korea. His approach, his strategy can only work so many times before things are going to spiral out of his control, and a situation arises that devolves into absolute chaos, and essentially, for our any tender listener, pardon the term, all hell's going to break loose. Whether it's an issue, that, like I said, that's domestic, or it's an issue that's foreign, it may have different implications. But he can only pull this trick so many times.
I mean, and I agree with you on that. And I, following the days after the strike on Syria, I and quite a few other people were quite upset about this, and I've seen a lot of Trump people actually, they've jumped the train, the Trump train. They jumped off the Trump train, and because that was the one thing that a lot of people voted for him on, because they knew that Hillary is hawkish, and the people who voted for Donald Trump did not want intervention, and that was the one thing he promised that, and he's gone back on his promise. He's gone back on many promises, and a lot of Trump people, like I said, they've stopped supporting him. Now you will still have the ones that are going to continue to support him no matter what. There's a lot of conservatives that are, the people that are just very, very conservative, and they just don't want to budge on their stance whatsoever. think Reagan was the perfect guy. And I've seen this a lot with just a lot of conservatives. Reagan and Trump. And what I don't understand is that a lot of what for instance, I know with Reagan, what he did is, and I don't know why he's such a conservative hero. I mean, the guy gave amnesty to many illegals. He restricted gun rights in this country, and he armed the Taliban. And I don't understand.
Reagan should have hauled off to the Hague for war crimes.
And now we have the conservatives appointing Donald Trump, and I've seen these images these people put up. They're like, I mean, there was one that was like, Jesus. I think it was Jesus holding a picture of Donald Trump, and it was like and it was something like, oh, they cursed him and they cursed his name or something. And it's as if this guy, as if Donald Trump's like a deity or something. You know what I mean? And it's as if he's like some sort of god on earth, and it just doesn't match up with the conservative moral view of this. This is a guy who's just a vulgar guy. I mean, this is what this cracks me up when people say Donald Trump's a fascist. I mean, there's absolutely nothing that resembles Donald Trump when it comes to that Donald Trump resembles when it comes to a fascist in terms of morals. I mean, he's just a vulgar guy. Has partaken so much degeneracy and is just this capitalist sort of mogul, really, real estate mogul. Yeah. And there's absolutely nothing fascist about Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I don't see why everybody thought he was going to drain the swamp, and everyone thought he was against globalism and such things like that. And right now it's playing out that he's just another capitalist, and he's just another globalist. Because what is he doing? He's getting involved in Syria. He's picking fights with other countries and such things like that. All that's going to happen is the same thing that's been happening. I mean, he's lobbing missiles at people. He's cutting taxes. What is cutting taxes going to do as far as helping us combat the massive debt that our country is undertaking right now? Something that's weighing down on our shoulders, and it's something that's going to catch up with us. The debt. It's going to destroy our economy, and we see taxes getting cut. I mean, a lot of it is just going to big businesses and such things like that, helping them operate and helping them make more money. But I don't see how it's going to help the average American as far as making sure our roads are nice and clear. I know when I was living out there in California, it's a massive built up area with millions of people within a 100 or so mile radius, and all the roads over there are absolutely horrible. None of them are nice, and what's paying for those roads? Taxes, right? Who else is going to pay for them? The homeowners over there? No, they think they're paying for those roads through their taxes. So check it out. You cut the taxes, what happens? There's less money to play with, right? So how do you make up for that? You take out welfare, you take out other social assistance and such things like that, and what does that do? That gives people less money to spend on the economy and give to smaller businesses that pay their taxes as well. And it's all going to kind of tumble downhill to where we have less money in general. I don't know what you guys think about that, but, let me know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things. I mean, the first would be a step in the right direction to stop having so many wars. That's a step in the first direction. Mm-hmm. And I obviously it's good for the working class, middle class, to be able to have taxes lowered for them so that they can have a little bit more money to help support their families, be able to just have a little bit extra cash. But from what I've seen and what I've heard from many people is that the taxes, or rather the tax cut, that they have benefited from, it's like $20, $30, maybe $40 extra onto their paycheck. And that's not like this huge, it's not like this huge gain, really. I mean, I think it's more symbolic at this point. I mean, I'm not entirely sure, but
it's a traditional, classic Republican move to lower taxes or to promise no new taxes, you know. But in reality, taxes is kind of what keeps this country moving. As far it funds the military, it funds any sort of projects going on, infrastructure and such things. So, what is $20 or $30? That's not going to make a huge difference in a lot of people, especially like people in the middle class. A
20
lot
or
of
30
people in the
bucks,
middle.
20 or 30 bucks, you can buy yourself, 3 packs of cigarettes,
Buy
make
yourself
America
three
great,
packs of cigarettes, a couple 6 packs of beer, maybe one night for the family at KFC or something like
yeah,
that, right? So you times that by how big is our middle class? Let's say the middle class is 100 million people or whatever. That's a lot of money we're missing out on, right? So who's going to be hurt by that? Our infrastructure is going to be hurt by that. Our ability to pay off all of our debt as a nation is going to be hurt by that. Our ability to fund the military is going to be hurt by that. And the lower classes are going to be hurt by that because those are the people that are depending on welfare, and those are the people that are depending on social assistance. And I right now I believe that the lower classes in America is actually probably the majority of the country. Not everybody is middle class. Not everybody makes a decent wage. A lot of people need help. What about all the single mothers? What about all the poor kids, all the orphans and such things like that? All those people are going to be hurt. They are losing the funding. They're losing the state funding that they need to live a decent life or pull themselves out of the hole that they're in. I know a lot of people who are, in their 30s and such, late 20s, 30s, 40s, and they're working jobs for $12 an hour, trying to support a family, trying to pay rent and such things like that. And these people are forced to live with a lot of other people, so you got a 3-bedroom house with 3 different families living in it. That's a big part of our country, and a lot of people don't see that unless you deal with people like that on a day-to-day basis. And those are the people that are going to get hurt because they need medical coverage and they can't necessarily afford that medical coverage because it's expensive. It is expensive to be able to take your kid to the doctor. If they're not covered, a lot of people they're relying on Covered California and such things, and Medi-Cal, Medicare, and those are the programs that are going to be losing out due to these tax cuts, because the Republicans don't believe in helping out all Americans. They believe in helping out themselves. So a Republican that votes for Trump because he's going to cut taxes, they believe that, okay, I'm going to get a tax cut, but now there's going to be a couple of kids or a couple of single mothers that are going to be missing out on health care. So what happens when they have a major issue and they get sick? Now they can't take care of their kids. Those
what
kids are going
happens?
to end up.
I'll tell you what happens. This is something which I heard about recently, which is it's quite outrageous, and it really shows how desperate people are and how messed up our healthcare system is. That people are actually taking, I believe, Ubers and Lyfts, I've heard, to the hospital rather than ambulances. It's become a thing because it is less expensive to have someone drive you to the hospital than have an ambulance take you. You pay what, $15 if you go on Uber. Well, if you go on an ambulance, I don't even know what the price is, but I believe it's a couple of $1,000s to be taken to the hospital.
I think it's $1,000 flat to have an ambulance ride, something like that. It's over $1,000 at least. I guarantee that. You take an ambulance ride, you're going to be in debt. You're paying for it, and if
they said don't get airlifted ever, because that's just even more insane.
Yeah, you might as well just say, "Oh, I'd rather my family not be in debt if I'm at risk of dying."
Might as well just die. That my family will be less in debt if I just die.
Yeah. It's about $1,500 for an ambulance ride. I can tell you that from personal.
In California.
Jeez.
Yeah, that's completely messed up, especially when someone's injured and they really need the help. And you don't have. It was when I was 16. And I happen not to have any medical coverage because of these issues that we're all talking about. And my mother was forced to pay that $1,500 right there, and it was pretty much devastating to her at the time. But on her son, completely worth it. That's how I know.
So it's excessive. Yeah. And and that was just a couple years ago. Think about what the price increase is now. You know, that was 10 years ago maybe. Things are more expensive now. They didn't get cheaper, I'll tell you that. You know, those are the type of things that are going to be effective by tax cuts. And a lot of people just think, oh, I'm going to get a couple extra dollars in my pocket, but really it's going to really help big business, but it's not going to help the average American. What is a couple dollars?
They're capitalizing on people's well-being. People are willing to pay to be saved by, and when you take away all these healthcare options, then they're looking at big bucks pretty much. Instead of government funding, which they're probably not going to get that much money off of, they probably look at it as they have to do it. So the big business guys want those options taken away, so people are forced to pay these outrageous prices just for help, you know.
Yeah, and the government should be helping people, definitely. I don't think an ambulance should cost you $1,500, $2,000, whatever it costs now. I guarantee it's not less. And that's a lot, you know, that's what a lot of people make in a paycheck. That's what a lot of people make in 2 paychecks, you know, and what's that going to do? Put them in debt. They're not going to be able to pay their rent, or they're just going to be forced not to pay that medical bill because they cannot afford it. There's a lot of people that cannot afford that. I bet you the majority of the people in the United States, the majority of the people that are going to be listening here, do not have $1,500 to spend to take an ambulance ride if they need it. Say you get hit by a car, that's very unfortunate, but it's even more unfortunate that you have to pay that much money to get help, to survive, you know. And what are you going to do? Refuse it? No one's going to refuse it if they get hit by a car and their legs get broken, or, you know, their back gets broken. And what do you think it's going to cost after they get to the hospital? What is the treatment going to cost? You know, one of my good friends, he recently broke his leg, right? And he's a working man. He pays his taxes. He owns a home. But luckily he has insurance through his job, right? So he breaks his leg. He goes to the hospital. They have to do a surgery on his leg and put plates and bolts in his leg, right, to repair it. And he gets the bill. And like I said, luckily he's on insurance, so he doesn't have to pay this whole thing. But the bill says it's $33,000. $33,000 bill just to mend a broken leg. I mean, to me, that's outrageous. That's what the majority of people don't even make that much in a year, you know, for a broken leg. And that's something that happens quite often. So take this into account. You make, you know, $30,000, $40,000 a year, $25,000 a year. And your kid is riding a skateboard, he snaps his leg and he needs to get that repaired, right? So they fix his leg and such thing. You just happen not to have insurance because you can't afford it. It's not free. You got to pay for it. And a lot of people cannot afford insurance, right? So the Republicans say you don't even have to have insurance, this and that. You're not going to get taxed for it. Now you're stuck with a $30,000 bill because you didn't have insurance at the time. And your kid broke his leg, you have to fix it, or else he's just going to have a destroyed leg his entire life. Now you have a $30,000 bill. I couldn't afford that. Could any of you guys afford a $30,000 bill because you just happen not to have insurance because you couldn't afford it?
And that's going to destroy lives. It's going to make people so they can't pay it. It's going to destroy their credit. They're going to never be able to get a car, never going to be able to own a home. And your family's just pretty much swamped. You're stuck renting. You're stuck at this low income job, and you're never going to be able to go anywhere just because a little accident.
Yeah, and you know, the price isn't going to go down because you're a kid, or the price isn't gonna be different because you're a grown man and you pay your taxes. It's just going to be a $30,000 bill. You know, you don't have insurance, you're screwed. You're going to be in debt. You're never going to be able to buy a house, get a loan for a house. You're never going to be able to get a loan for a car because you couldn't fix your broken leg. I couldn't afford that right now. If I break my leg and I don't have insurance, then I might as well say, hey, don't fix my leg.
Well, might as well give up on your hopes and dreams after that.
So let's see some of your guys' ideas on taxes. What do you guys think about the whole tax cut issue, Josh, Luca, Matt?
For a few minutes about this. During the 50s and 60s, there was a group of conservative economists, Milton Friedman, Arthur Laffer, who had this idea, which kind of evolved into supply side economics, that if you cut taxes on the wealthy and corporations, then you'll see an explosion of innovation, hiring, and all of that wealth will trickle down to the middle and lower classes. And it sounds kind of like a fairy tale economic policy. It sounds good on the surface, but it ignores basic economics, that economies are driven by demand, not by supply. You can cut taxes on corporations and the wealthy all you want, but if your middle class and your lower class consumers don't have the money to purchase the goods, you don't have any options. And this is the problem with Trump's tax plan. We're not opposed to people on the bottom, people in the middle getting a tax cut. That's well and good. But what happens is when you cut taxes to the extent that they were cut on corporations and the wealthy, you have a huge hole in that deficit. And the Republicans have been very frank that they want to make up that hole by cutting social programs. These social programs exist because there are structural defects within capitalism that have been getting worse and worse. So these people have to rely on these programs. It's unfortunate, but it's true. Most of these people in these programs are not there because they're lazy or they're on drugs. Some of them are. I mean, I will admit that, but there are a lot that are not. They're good people that have to rely on these because capitalism can't provide the jobs and the income needed to survive in society, because capitalism is based upon continuous growth, continuous profit, expanding these two concepts. And it does that through cutting wages, through deteriorating working conditions. And a model like that cannot survive. And that's why we see what we see in this country today, where for the last 40 years, wages have not kept pace with inflation. People, families, individuals, our lifestyle has continually gotten deteriorated, continually has gotten worse throughout the years. We're in a situation now where most women don't even have an option to stay at home and be a stay-at-home mother. They have to work because they can't afford it anymore. There's no such thing as the family wage. So the corporatist system, which I know we haven't really touched on today, but the corporatist system, these issues, because that shared management style of the occupation group of the corporation makes it so that wages do not go down to the lowest common denominator. They stay high, so people can afford to have a family, they can afford a house, and you don't see the cutting of wages that you do in capitalism. So Republican economic policy, to a large extent, is exactly like you and JD expressed. It's pure snake oil. It's toxic because it ignores the basic fundamental truth that economies are driven by demand and supply is a result of demand. So any kind of tax policy has to be aimed towards increasing.
Well, Josh, let me ask you this. I'm just kind of spitballing this idea out there to see what you think. What's your take on an idea of something like allowing individual business owners, as they decrease their personal their personal profit, including bonuses, and reinvest that take home total essentially for them back into their companies to hire new employees and to provide bonuses to lower management or baseline employees, to allow there to be a corresponding reduction in tax rate, so that you're actually incentivizing businesses to hire employees. What's your take on that? Does that seem like something that could be possible, or
into the current system we have, just because the current system we have is adversarial? It has the ownership and management against the employees. They don't look at each other as working together towards a common goal. They look at each other as being opposed. The employees always want to take from the management and the owner to enrich themselves, and the owners of the company want to pay the employees as little as they possibly can to increase profits and market share. And that's not going to change under capitalism. Under corporatism, which we talk about, because of that shared management style, the owner, workers, middle management, everybody realizes that they're in this together. They have to work together to achieve a common goal and to make more and to be more successful. So it doesn't work with the current system that we have now, but it's ideal because just like every one of us in this nation, we all have a common interest, and we all want to see a better community for our children and our families. But a lot of times, because of the context in which we live, it's hard for us to recognize that. We don't see that common interest, and we see ourselves as being opposed to other people in our community, when that's simply not the case.
All right, everybody, you heard it here. This is the Fascist Roundtable closing out. I think we covered a lot of good things here. We covered our thoughts on national policy or foreign policy, what we are seeing our government doing today as far as getting involved in wars that we shouldn't be getting involved in, things that are only going to affect Americans negatively, and pretty much they're attacking people who are really no threat to us. They don't have any effect on our day-to-day lives. We covered taxes. Trump is cutting taxes. The Republicans want to cut taxes, and they also, how they're going to make up for that is by cutting our social programs that we need. I have family members that need food stamps. I know a lot of people that need government assistance as far as health care and such things, and they're one day they're not going to get it if we keep going in the direction that we're going in, and it's really going to hurt a lot of families out there. And I know a lot of people that are probably listening to us have, similar stories and come from similar backgrounds. Really, it's only going to hurt you. For the average American is maybe saving a couple bucks, couple dollars a paycheck on these tax cuts. And it's really not going to make much of a difference as far as your well-being and your quality of life. If anything, it's going to affect a lot more people in a negative way. It's going to take a lot of people's food stamps away, a lot of people's government provided health care away, and we're not going to have anything to show for it. So I just want to ask if any of you guys have something else to add before we close out here. I know we've been talking for roughly an hour, 45 minutes to an hour or so. What do you think, starting off with Josh? Any closing thoughts on this?
Just a few brief words. I know we talked about Syria, talked about foreign policy in general, talked about social programs, tax cuts. Fine and dandy. And a lot of you who are new to this movement might be thinking that we're a more exaggerated form of conservatism or on the right. And nothing could be further from the truth. And I hope that you got some of that today in our back and forth and talking with each other, because what we're offering here is not on the right and it's not on the left. It's unique. It's something that's never been tried in this country before, and we know it's going to work. And please check us out, AmericanBlackshirts.com. We have almost 200 articles, videos up there explaining who we are, what our policy positions are. And if you get anything out of this, I want it to be this. As a fascist, when we're talking about foreign policy, what should a fascist foreign policy be? When we're talking about taxes, social programs, what should a fascist position be on these issues? When you take that step, that's when you start breaking away from the current system and the left-right kind of duopoly that we have to live with. So just that if you get anything out of this, just think as a fascist.
Well, I would add that I think that as far as our foreign policy is concerned, I think we need to stop with the reckless games that are being played. I think what we need to do as a society is to embrace a fascist vision for foreign policy, which is going to be much more consistent. It's going to be more balanced, and it's going to be much more pragmatic. I think that this reckless back and forth that we're seeing from the White House of we're bombing today, we're negotiating tomorrow, and then the next day we're bombing again. We need to develop a consistent strategy, a consistent approach on how we want to address issues, which we could utilize from one part of the world to the next, which it can be adapted for specific contingencies. But this whole approach that we're seeing from the White House with different, just handling each region willy-nilly, just very, very inconsistent, it's going to get us into a lot of trouble. So my takeaway would be just to it's about time that we have a consistent strategy regarding foreign policy, and we can't be this reckless anymore. We can't afford it.
Luca, anything?
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment that we need to have a consistent foreign policy plan, and really that foreign policy plan should be not complete isolation, because we are a major power in this world, but we need to definitely take a step back and I think about what we are doing and the long-term effects that it has. I think too often we get involved with things and we think of the now and what's going to benefit us in the short term. We need to step back, we need to take a breath, and we need to look at what we are doing and how it's going to affect us in the future, because we've made these mistakes far too many times. We've lost too much money and we've shed too much American blood, and that needs to stop.
Definitely. And just one more thing I have to say about as far as intervening in the Middle East and such things. You see a lot of people against war and such things, but as soon as something like this happens, they all rally behind the president and such things, and they agree to send our people to war and send our young men to war. So just think about it, people. Do we want more of our young men to die in a faraway country that really has no effect on our daily lives or put any people in danger? Do we want to lose lives over something as simple as oil? People are going to lose their lives over this. Bad things are going to happen. We're going to spend trillions of dollars just to do another copycat war of Iraq. We invade Syria, it's going to be the same exact war that we had in Iraq. And how long was that war? 10 years? And it never really ended. It just we pulled out and just let everything go to crap over there. And the killing never stopped. It never did. And if we intervene in the Middle East again, the same deal is going to happen. We're just going to destabilize the region even further. And it's going to be the same old story for the next who knows how many decades. It's never going to be finished. It's just endless killing. It doesn't make sense. So I just want everybody to think about that. Do you want our young men to die in a faraway place for no reason at all, for no good cause, when no American is being threatened? Syria isn't going to hurt us. The rebels over there, they're not going to save us. They're not going to help us in any way. All they're doing is sucking down our money. 100 tomahawks. Somebody said that one tomahawk costs like, this many $100,000. That's give me $100,000. I'll make it go a long way. But you send that tomahawk over there, that's $100,000 gone in a flash and a boom, gone, never to be seen again.
About $1.5 million each tomahawk costs.
Okay, well, that's a massive amount of money. That could have went to poor families in America, or could have went to pay off our debt, our massive debt. What is it? Trillions of dollars. So yeah, I just want to thank you all for listening here. It's always a pleasure to speak to my fellow Blackshirts, speak to other leaders in the American Blackshirts movement, and to kind of release our thoughts to our viewers here. I know you guys like this. So one thing I got to ask you is to like this video. Please subscribe to our channel if you can, if you feel comfortable with it. Share it, because I think a lot of people like to hear our message, and we put a lot of good thoughts out here, and it's definitely what we really think and our position collectively. And one thing you will notice is that we tend to all agree with each other, and I could almost guarantee you that you, the listener, agree with us as well, because what we are saying is real and is what needs to happen in this country in the direction that we feel like it needs to take. And it's nothing but good. Nothing that we're feeding you guys is going to be bad for the country. It's definitely not. So thank you very much. I definitely want to see you guys again. Hopefully we could do this next week, and we want to put out a lot of regular content there for you guys. So we're going to have JD do a call to action, maybe put in a couple thoughts about what we were talking about, and we'll see you guys again soon. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, once again, this is JD here to tell you that, like last time, we have a few meetups coming up. We have the Midwest meetup, which I told you guys about last episode. This episode, I want to tell you that there's a brand new Deep South meetup coming up. So if you live in any of the Deep South states, you should definitely contact AmericanBlackshirts.com if you're a member. If you're not a member, you should definitely join and seek to meet up with these black shirts. And other than that, from what I say, we hit very good points. We about all these social problems and this foreign intervention that's just bringing our country down. It's making it so we can't take care of our own people. We're spending all this money. I'm not against spending money on the military. The military is something that we need to. It needs to be strong. But why do we need to be around the entire world? Why are we stationed in Korea? Why are we still in the Middle East after a decade and a half? When I was 9 years old, we invaded Afghanistan. We're still there, and it's just the same old stuff again and again, and there's no gain for our country. Our country's just declining after that. So what we need change. Do away with all this leftist and rightist stuff. We need a whole new system. We all need to be united. We need to think as one people, one movement. We need to all assimilate into a new American way. We need to all become fascists. So all you fascists, join the party. We are a skeleton of a national organization, and we need all the fascists, all the true fascists to come and fill us up. It's very possible for a fascist party to rise up in the U.S., and that's what we need. We need everyone to be united. So like I said, contact AmericanBlackshirts.com and come to these meetups. For all our members out there, there's no reason why you shouldn't come to these meetups. You should look at it as your duty to come to these meetups. They're very big things for us in the future, and you should be a part of it. So thank you guys for listening. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Feel free to contact me. Thank you guys.